Hey, good day, everybody. I want to cover access to, but if you notice on the screen, this is my granddaughter who wants to help us all out. As she's been sitting by my side grading some papers, so hopefully she did a good job. And one picture to share with you. This was the National Geographic Picture of the Year. It's taken in Antarctica. It's seals on a little iceberg here. But I noticed it was pointing in the right direction. And I hope through all of this craziness that we're all pointed in the right direction. Hey, let's kind of take a look at last week's before we dig back in. So if you remember, last week we created two tables in our Access database. We, first of all, created a database called Owners. We have these two owners who are going to bring their pets into CMF Vets. And we have some patients, and of course, they're dogs and cats. We've got Fluffy, Ranger, and Paws. And we pulled in a few other tables, the appointments that are scheduled, the treatment cost, and the two veterinarians. We've got Teresa and William working with us. We built our first query last week, and we just pulled in the addresses. And we have our owner's form, which is just one record at a time, and we can click the arrow down here to move forward. We also had a printed type report, well, if I take the time to print it, and it had like the date on it and so forth. Let me close all of these back up by clicking the X up here. And let's get started with Access Module 2. Every time you create something called a query, you go out and find the information that you're looking for. And you've been doing a lot of queries in your life, whether you've called it that name or not. Let me explain. If you go to Bing or Google and let me type in coronavirus map, that is my query. And it's looking through a giant database of all the web pages in the entire planet. And it gives me some kind of result page. So here we are, and I can now zoom in and find the exact kind of information I'm looking for, like the number of cases. And I can click right here and even see in our neck of the woods, what do our numbers look like? They're very low at this point. So let's hope it stays that way. So stay healthy. So in that same idea of creating a query, now let's go into our CMF Vets database. We're starting on Module 2, and we want to make sure that we understand a lot about queries. That's where we're going to be focused this week. So our first query is on the left right over here. I'm going to select that I want to go into. So let's create a very simple query. We hit the Create tab. We look in the Queries group, and let's click Query Design. And it asks me, which tables do I want to add? Let me add appointments. I double clicked right there. I can stretch this down a little bit so I can see what all the field names are. Just a reminder, that little key out in front means it's the primary key. That means it has to be a unique item. So no two appointments could have the same appointment ID. This little asterisk at the top is actually called a wildcard. If I double click on that wildcard, it puts all the fields of appointments. And if I want to run this query to see all the appointments right now, I could click Run right here. And here's all the appointments I have so far. I'm not going to save this one, so I'll just click X and say no to save it. Now, before we go any further, I want to add some records to our database. Just like in real life, the vet company, the appointments are growing and everything is changing. So what I want you to do is open the owner's table. Remember, we have two. Look in figure 2-5 of your book, and you're going to add, and I'll come back and show you, several records to your owner's table, several records to your patient's table, and also to your veterinarian's table. So follow figure 2-5A, B, and C, and I'll meet you back after you get that typed in. Thanks. So I've added the two extra vets right here. Let me close that up. And I've added the additional patients, and I've added the additional owners. Okay, so next thing, let's start our official first query We'll save everything as we go. So what we're going to do is go under the Create tab, and we're going to go under Query Design. So what we want to do under Query Design is we're going to look at the Appointments table. So I'm going to add that table right here by double clicking. I'm going to stretch it out again so I can see all the different fields. And I'm looking for something in particular. I want you to imagine that someone just called me on the phone. I work at this vet office, and they know that they are a patient. They work with veterinarian Dr. Gomez, who's G01, and they kind of want to know what are the appointments going to be for Dr. Gomez. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start off by double clicking on veterinarian, and that, if you notice, as soon as I double click, comes down here. And this is what I call my criteria row. This is what I'm looking for, the information. Next, I'm going to double click on appointment date, and I'm going to double click appointment time, patient ID, treatment number, and owner. So I can put this in the order and the information that I want to see. Now, if I were to run it right now, I would get all the appointments, but I want to look for particular ones. And my criteria is that I want to see what the appointments for Dr. Gomez, which is G01. So I'm going to come down here to my exact criteria row. Do you see the word criteria right down here where I'm pointing? And I'm going to actually type in G01. And important here, it doesn't matter about case. So uppercase, lowercase g, but by the way, that is a 0 and a 1, not an O and a 1. And now this is going to show me for the criteria G01, all the veterinarians who have an appointment date, time, patient ID, treatment number, and owner, if they are Dr. Gomez. So I'll hit run up here, which is the exclamation point. And only, it looks at this point, Dr. Gomez must be new. He only has one appointment on the doc right now on August 23rd at 10 a.m. It's going to see patient C1 and do treatment T4 and owner O2. Now, if we wanted to see what all those items are, we'd have to open those tables to see them. Now, what I want to do before I go any further, though, is actually save this. So to actually save this, I'm going to close this little X right here. And it says, hey, do you want to save this query? I don't want to call it query 1. I want it to be the exact query name I want. I'm going to call it M02. By the way, that stands for module 2. And Q01. So it's the first saved query in module 2, if that helps. By the way, those are both zeros. So I'm going to click OK here. Notice it comes right down under queries. And every time I want to run this, I could double click, and this query will change over time. In other words, let's say Dr. Gomez gets tons more appointments and we start to fill his appointments in. This will grow in length. So we'll know that this is Dr. Gomez. And if we were not doing this with our textbook, we'd probably call this Dr. Gomez appointments. Let's go ahead and close that. Let's talk about wildcards. If you're out on the internet on Google or Bing, and I type in something like my name, Corinne Hoyes, and let's say I'm not too sure how to spell that, I can actually put an asterisk. This is considered a wildcard. It's a star. And what it will do is find anybody on the internet that has the beginning of my name and has, we're not sure of the ending. So it does find me. So wildcards help you find information. So let me show you how we're going to use them in our particular database. I'm going to do another query. I'll go under the Create tab, Query Design. And this time, let me click back on Tables. I want to dig in to my Owners table. So I'm going to double click on Owners, stretch that out. And once I get into this Owners table, I would like you to double click on owner first name to bring it down to our criteria, owner last name, owner street address, owner city, owner state, owner postal code. And so basically we have the address pieces. And now I just want to find any of our customers who happen to live in a state that starts with the letter U, as in Utah. So I can come down here to the criteria line. I don't want to just type a U because the state would literally have to be only the letter U for it to apply. But I'm going to type this, put a U, it doesn't matter uppercase or lowercase, and then put this wildcard. What this means is find a state that starts with a U. Other ways I could do it, let's say I want to find a state that starts with a T. I could put T star. How about if I wanted to end in an A like Virginia does? I could put asterisk and an A, or a wildcard A, to find a state that ends in an A. And one more, what would it do if I put wildcard, the asterisk, the letter R-E, and then the asterisk? That would find any word that has an R and an E in the middle of the word in that particular order right next to each other. So you can use wildcards in a lot of different ways. Let's go ahead and hit run. And look right here, our owner state, everyone is starting with a U right here. So now we're in good shape. We're going to save this query a little different this time. I want to show you another way. We're going to go up to the File tab on the ribbon and go into Backstage View. We're going to go down to Save As. And in this Save As gallery, we're going to pick Save Object As. This database, remember, saves automatically, but we're going to save just this object right here. So we may want to use it right here. So I'm going to now click Save Object As, and I'm going to call this one M02 for Module 02 and Query 02, and save the query as itself. So I'm going to save that object, and notice it still goes over here, but I wanted to show you both ways of saving that query right there. Let's go ahead and close that query down.